You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly.
Welcome to another edition of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. This is the podcast that lets you know all of the latest happening in the world of Lucha Libre. We cover news and events from the week that was in Lucha Libre, talking Mexico-based promotions and top independents, along with luchador-related news from throughout the United States. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. This podcast and others from the network are also available on all major podcast streaming platforms like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Speaker, and more. My name is Miranda Morales, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. And let me introduce to you the rest of the team. Up first, he is the dashing one, Mr. Dusty Murphy. Dusty, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. How's it going for you, Miranda?
Going well. And the third member of this trio is who?
Who?
It is the one and only Brendan Barr.
That's who.
Hey. Oh, man, this is it. We've reached the big week. This is kind of like crazy.
Yeah. It feels like all year kind of builds to this week.
Yes.
Well, more than a lot of people know, because my goodness, I knew a lot was going on, but filtering through to find all the Lucha content for this weekend, and there's a lot, there's a lot going on.
Well, and if you may not know what we're alluding to, of course, hopefully now you know that we are talking about WrestleMania weekend happening, of course, in Dallas, Texas. But on top of WrestleMania itself, this weekend has become synonymous with wrestling from all over. A wrestling mecca of the world, literally, is now concentrated in Dallas, Texas, with promotions left and right having shows throughout the entire weekend, some as early as Wednesday, and some going through all the way through the weekend. So it is just phenomenal to see everything online, on social media, everyone that's heading over there. And by proxy, this means it's a pretty good, week for Lucha Libre, as Brendan mentioned. And we will be doing that in just a second. We actually are doing a different format for this week's show, where we are really going to be honing in on all of those shows and events happening for WrestleMania weekend up first, and then on our second half get into news of the week. But with that, Brendan, go ahead and take it away, the breakdown of WrestleMania week shows.
Well, first off, I do want us, we were talking about it. We always talk about supporting the indie stuff. I want to wish everybody who's working this weekend in Dallas or outside of Dallas, or, anywhere in the States, even in South America, because I know Zenshi, you're still out there doing stuff with all of them, and he is a friend of the show. I like to pretend he listens every week, but he's probably a busy man. So wish all of you great fortune this weekend, because this is a big weekend to get your brand out there, and thank you once again for putting yourselves on the line for our entertainment. So we'll start there. But yeah, the events are going on. You said Wednesday, so now what was actually going on Wednesday? I didn't find that in my Lucha breakdown.
Well, not so much Lucha related, but just independent wrestling related. Okay. I saw some, I can't remember the exact promotion. I have to double check, but I believe there was events happening as of yesterday, in the Dallas area.
There certainly was a lot that started today, and it started early. So I'm going to start by throwing to Dusty, because AAA started off the Lucha content today.
Yeah, AAA, it taped today as we're recording this today. Thursday, the 31st of March. It was $15 on Fight TV. It was one of the earliest shows of the weekend, and it's likely to be the freshest and most rested anybody that's in these matches will be all weekend, so it's a good chance to see them kind of doing their best. Just early, I said, early in the weekend, you get a little more energetic performance at times, and, it's just important. Can't miss show, honestly. We'll run down the card. First match is Micro Man, very famous lately. Nice chance to see Micro Man teaming in a trios match with Nino Hamburguesa and Taya versus La Hydra, Mini Abismo Negro Jr., and Rey Escorpion. The second match is another trios match of Aramis, Mr. Iguana, and Octagon Jr. versus Abismo Negro Jr., Aries, and Fabi Apache. Next is a tag team match for the NWA tag team titles. Bestia 666 and Mecha Wolf versus Aerostar and Drago. Next up, another trios match. Drago Kid, Jack Cartwheel, and Pagano versus Gringo Loco, Puma King, and Sam Adonis. Gringo Loco may be undergoing a name change based on his recent Facebook post. I have no idea if that had a bearing on his appearance with AAA yet at this show. If it does, we'll mention it next week. Next match was a AAA Cruiserweight Championship match. Triple threat, Laredo Kid versus Bandito versus Flamita, and Laredo Kid's 12th defense of the title. And the main event was Psycho Clown versus Taurus. Incredible card, can't miss card. You gotta see it, you gotta love it. A lot of good stuff going on there. Psycho Clown, I haven't heard the results of the show yet because I haven't had a chance to watch it, but it was my understanding that Psycho Clown stayed afterwards until every kid got a picture and an autograph, and that he was super over with the kids at the show. So
I believe that.
Yeah, that's awesome and exciting news.
I've seen that myself. Just on a local level of Psycho Clown staying after a show, well past the show, to take photographs and sign autographs with kids. So that does not surprise me.
So cool. It's always nice to hear the, nice guys behind the scenes. And there's a reason he's the John Cena of Mexico. Like, you see this stuff, and kids love him. I had wondered about the transition to America for Psycho Clown. The name and kind of gimmick lent itself to more of a heel thing, but apparently the kids ate it up.
Well, the kids in Texas ate it up. I mean,
that's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say how that would go other places. It's very interesting to watch the indies and see certain characters that work really well in some cities and then not so well in others. But I think anywhere Lucha's going to be big, I think Psycho Clown will be big. So we talked a bit about that last week.
Yeah.
I did want to point out that in addition to Psycho Clown being that, I've seen him do that. Another person, a big name, you might have heard this guy, Rey Mysterio Jr. has, at many of his indie appearances, made sure that every fan has gotten a picture with him wrapped to the ring. Like, we had to stay very late at a show just because everybody in that arena needed to get their picture with Rey, and I was not mad about it. But
yeah, he had the chance. Why not?
Right? Exactly.
Very cool. But yeah, now there's some GCW news.
Before we go to that, I did want to comment on your talking about, Mr. I read his name as I was trying to get out the word out of my mouth. Hello, Mr. Iguana. We're always talking about you, but no.
Yeah.
I was talking about Gringo Loco this time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to refer to, Cubs fans Lucha blog and, his Lucha Wiki. He refers to Gringo Loco as the indie version because there is a Mexican version. So because names are licensed through the Wrestling and Boxing Commission in Mexico, working for a Mexican promotion, he may not be able to use that name. So
Interesting.
When we actually see the broadcast, he may have a different name. That'll be what that's all about. When you mentioned that, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. There is another Gringo Loco. So That may be what's going on there.
Yeah, he was calling himself Keeping It Loco lately on social media, so
Yep.
that would be
Did see
interesting. Yeah.
Interesting indeed. But
Yeah.
also on Thursday, another TV taping, and this will be available. So I just want to go over, that was on Fight, you said? Was that was a $18 fight?
$15.
$15 fight.
And that's the best price that AAA's had for a show in quite a while, so.
It fits really well with the pricing scheme for over this weekend. You'll hear as we go through events that I know anything that's on Fight is right around that range this weekend. So maybe that had something to do with it, but not on Fight. Well, actually kind of on Fight. We had an MLW taping also today, being Thursday when we record this.
Yes, and that is MLW Intimidation Games. Let me pull this up. That is being filmed right now, and that is likely going to be part of MLW Fusion shows that we are going to be seeing later on this spring and summer. Some interesting points as far as matches advertised for Intimidation Game. That is, of course, the MLW World Heavyweight Championship is being defended in a triple threat match with Alexander Hammerstone versus Jacob Fatu versus Mads Kruger. Also being announced, and who knows who this mystery opponent will be, but a singles match for the MLW World Middleweight Championship, Myron Reed versus to be determined. And then for their more lucha-oriented content, you have a very interesting tag match. The team of Gangrel and Pagano will be taking on Los Parks, LA Park and LA Park Jr. We also have a women's match, Sasha McKenzie versus Holodead, as well as they ramp up for possibly what we're going to be seeing later on this spring and summer with the featherweight division. But that is just one of two MLW shows happening this weekend.
Yeah, the other one, when we get to it, is going to be really big. There's a lot going on there, but that's a nice little teaser. Hopefully they got themselves a nice hot crowd of people because, as Dusty pointed out, everybody will be fresh. It's not just the wrestlers that'll be fresh. It's all the fans too, because I can tell you from being at a weekend like this, it's hard to have that energy level on a Sunday.
Fan fatigue is real.
But if you were in town and you were looking for something a little different, Dark Arts Entertainment and Flowbone Pro Wrestling Pro Wrestling Ghouls had a show that's probably a little more for your style. It looks like it was kind of patterned after like a Lucha Vavavoom. They didn't announce events so much as they were announcing burlesque and luchadors and all that other sort of thing. I didn't see where the actual luchadors were listed, but it is part of the Super Beast training grounds for a co-sponsor, so a lot of Texas-based and California-based luchadors probably, as well as anybody else they could have grabbed. But it sounded like, to me that sounded like a great way to end out the Thursday. There was having a lucha and why did it just shoot out of my head again? And a little bit of light entertainment. I'm just going to put it that way. Mm-hmm. But if you still wanted to have more wrestling, there is an event that was called the Mark Hitchcock Memorial, which was at 9 p.m. also on Fight TV for, I believe, $13. There were a couple of lucha matches on there. Bandito versus Mike Bailey, Ace Austin, Black Taurus, Josh Alexander versus Michael Oku, Rey Horus, and Laredo Kid. So, good stuff there. So, moving on to Friday, which is hopefully when you're hearing this, we'll start the day early again with a 2 p.m. start for MLW, and this is kind of the big one. So, Miranda, you have some info on that?
Yes, this is the matinee show, the afternoon show happening on Friday, and this is MLW Presents Azteca Underground, a show that they have been hyping up and building up to on the subsequent or previous weeks of MLW Fusion. This is a very stacked card, so I'm going to go through it as quickly and succinctly as I possibly can. This also does include some new matches that have been added just as recently as this week. We will have a Azteca Apocalypto match. LA Park versus Jacob Fatu, two men with a pretty rich and deep history in MLW. We also are going to have a trios match, and not so much in the traditional trios, but more of a six-man tag, with the Von Erichs teaming up with Hammerstone to face Richard Holiday, King Muertes, and Mads Kruger. We have labeled a Super Lucha match, Bandido versus Flamita. And also a grudge match, Enzo versus Casey Navarro. A Super Estrella de Trio. So this is more of a traditional trios match. Aerostar, Microman, and El Dragon set to face the team of Strange Sangre, Aries, Mini Abismo Negro, and a Luchador Sorpresa. As well as just straight up good wrestling matches. Octagon Jr. will be facing Matt Cross. There also will be a four-way for the National Openweight Championship. Alex Kane will be defending his championship against ACH, Myron Reed, and Puma King. As well as Adames and Gino Medina will be facing off in a Mexican strap match. This is a mix of not a strap match within the ring, but outside of the ring. The ring will be surrounded by luchadors and MLW wrestlers, all with straps in hand. So anytime one of these competitors ends up going outside of the ring, they will be violently slapped with leather straps until they get back inside the ring.
I just realized Microman's going to be one of the guys at ringside for that.
That has to be, because we'll go into this more in this week in MLW, but Microman is over. Announced this week, and even just recently, we are going to have a one-on-one match. Davey Richards will be facing Danny Limelight.
Oh,
the
nice.
Team of Hustle and Power, which is EJ Nduka and Calvin Tankman, will be facing Los Parks. And somewhat of a confrontation, a no-holds-barred confrontation. Not exactly sure what this means, but Cesar Duran himself will be confronting Alex Hammerstone. In the ring, we know that Cesar Duran has really been persistent in trying to make Alex Hammerstone's life miserable. He drove a wedge between him and his best friend Richard Holiday and has been throwing every single obstacle in his way. So Cesar Duran is a man. Well, if you can't get it done right, you gotta do it yourself. So who knows what this confrontation will be. And also, again, this is a whole event extravaganza. It's going to be an interactive experience, including a lucha lunch. So first and second ticket, row ticket holders are going to have exclusive access to a taco bar, a tour of Cesar Duran's office, and meet and greets with Cesar Duran himself, as well as Microman, and a special opportunity for guests to search Caesar's Cathedral of Violence on an Azteca treasure hunt before the show kicks off. That and much, much more. Showtime for this is 2 p.m. and one of the biggest Azteca Underground shows that they produced, if not the biggest one in its existence. So much that's going to be coming out of that, and very much content that we are likely going to see on weekly episodes of Azteca Underground.
So you threw in a lot. I'm just going to throw out a couple more. If we doubled up on it, that's okay. I apologize to the audience, but I did have a couple other ones that I was able to round up. Octagon Jr. against Matt Cross.
Yep.
Holiday versus Cheek Tormenta, and
Yep.
we still have Aramis, Puma King, and Hyoda LA Park scheduled to appear. Sorry. You sounded like you were going to jump in with some
No,
facts
that
there.
one, we did talk about Matt Cross versus Octagon Jr., but I did not have Holodead versus Cheek Tormenta on my list. So that one is
Okay, I just had it in a different order. That's why I was like, I might have heard it but yeah.
No, but that one was not on my list. So that in and of itself too is a great addition to this full lineup.
Yeah. And then we've got New Japan. Now, I don't know, Dusty, did you prep this one or do I?
I did not, no.
I did. Okay. I put it on my list. I forgot to ask you ahead of time. New Japan's Lone Star Shootout at 5 p.m. on Friday. Presumably it will eventually be available on New Japan's streaming app, but I did not have any streaming details for that one. Unlike, by the way, that MLW event is inevitably going to wind up on the YouTube channel. It will take longer than a lot of these to get there, but you will, if you're not in Dallas this weekend, you'll get to see it. New Japan is the same way. I don't know when it's going to wind up there. It may take a little while. They have an event there, though, called the Lone Star Shootout, and it does have lucha content. It has a match with Juice Robinson, David Finlay, Kevin Knight, and Daniel Garcia versus Mascara Dorada, Clark Connors, Carl Fredericks, and Yuyu Uemura. Apparently, Mascara Dorada is going to be a regular on New Japan's American content, which makes me both happy and sad because now I have to now I have to watch more New Japan, even though that's not my job on this show.
I'm just excited to have something from New Japan to cover. It's been a lot.
It has been.
It's been a hot minute, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have a 7 p.m. show for a group called Texas Style Wrestling, which has La Rebellion against Los Misfits, although I think that's how they're saying it. It's MSFTS. So, new words, new internet words. And that's ostensibly going to be for the NWA World Tag Team Championship. You'll also have Alex Arsenal against Damien 666 on the show. So, a little bit of lucha, Texas style lucha in there for sure, because those are both hard hitting, kind of, to use our terminology on the show. It is, if we want to use the terminology on the show, they're more Texas style than they are the California style. So, and then Friday has two big shows, the first of which has shockingly little lucha content on it. Thanks, Tony Khan. That's ROH, where really the only match that is super lucha that's been listed is the dream match of Bandito versus Jonathan Gresham to unify the ROH championship. Unfortunately, because of so many factors going on, I do not anticipate Bandito coming out on top on this one. I think it'll be a fantastic match, but if you don't want to run this down for the one match, it's probably not going to be Bandito carrying the championship into the new era of ROH under Tony Khan. It's just my guess. That will be available on Fight, although it is much cheaper if you get it through the ROH app, which is probably the last time you're going to be able to get new content through the ROH app. So, if you're like me and you still have that, then you can go ahead and watch that on Friday for your normal ROH, $5 to $9, depending on your subscription. Or you can get it on Fight for $15. But then the other big card going on Friday is GCW's The World on Lucha. And, I have some matches here. Miranda, if you have any extra information, feel free to pile on with me here.
No worries.
This is going to be on Fight for $14. We have the super dream match, Psycho Clown versus Dr. Wagner Jr. in the main event. I'm fully expecting this is going to be bloody and brutal and this will not be the end of it. So, fully expect that there will be you'll be coming out of that match wanting a lot more of those two together, because that seems to be their goal. We also have Pagano versus Sadika in an extreme match. I don't know why on earth we need to see that on a GCW show. They do enough extreme matches, but they're billing this as an extreme match. So, it's going to be brutal. It's going to be brutal. We won't be seeing cookie sheets. We'll be seeing skewers and other awful things, but,
yeah, this one's going to go hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those two both can go hard. You don't need to call it an extreme match. You just say you're having Pagano versus Sadika in a match, and everybody's going to be like, oh, that's going to be rough.
Yes.
Then we have Jack Cartwheel against, on this night, he is known as Johnny Caballero. The many names of Johnny, even over this weekend. Tony Deppen versus Psychosis, which I think is going to be an instant classic, honestly. Tony Deppen is so good at working the crowd, and Psychosis is such a legend and so good at making anybody he works with look that much better. I think that you will really see a nice elevated match out of those two. And Gringo Loco, Abismo Negro Jr., and Demonic Flamita. So he's billed as demonic on this one, as opposed to earlier in the weekend where he's just Flamita. Against Laredo Kid, Rey Horus, and ASF. That's just a classic 6-man tag match. That's going to be great. And you have AR Fox versus Ninja Mac. Golden Dragon versus Octagon Jr. versus Drago Kid versus Arrow Boy versus Chris Carter versus Shane Mercer.
It would not be a GCW event without a scramble. Even so, this is the standard GCW scramble match.
Okay, so do you know a bit about the format on that kind of scramble match, or is it just 6 guys and chaos?
That's a good question. I would say typically there's a format of everyone jumps into the ring. But this one too, it's a lucha scramble. So that's even more, chaos piled on top of this. So I cannot predict what the format will be on here. I'm just going to say that right now.
But, that's probably going to be either the start of the show or near the start of the show. Yes. So it'll be a heck of a way to kickstart that. Also on Friday, I made it sound like those are the two big ones, but there's the power lineup seems to be on Friday. Martinez Entertainment is having an event. That's going to be in Arlington, so it's a little bit of a drive from Dallas, but not too much. On that card, you'll have Michael Elgin and Psycho Clown against Black Taurus and Laredo Kid. El Hijo del Santo and Ultimo Dragon versus Fishman Jr. and Shocker. Crazy Boy and Extreme Tiger versus Aerostar and Drago. That's your classic AAA tag team right there. Diego de la Cruz and Jonathan Vega versus Erio de Juarez and Black Danger for the Martinez Tag Team Championship. And Mecha Wolf versus Silver Tiger for the Martinez Heavyweight Championship. I would like to point out, they have said over, somebody, Cubs fan pointed out who he thinks was working the most, but Mecha Wolf and, Bestia 666 are going to be brought up a lot in this. They're going to be defending the tag team champions a couple times. Mecha Wolf's on this card. If those are your guys, this is the weekend for you. You're going to get a lot of content out of them. We do also on Friday have an Impact. I believe it's a taping.
It is not necessarily a taping. It is an event that's going to be, I believe, part of WrestleCon. And it will be available on Fight TV. Impact will then present a midnight show featuring also their throwback style. If you think of Southpaw Wrestling, Impact Provisional Wrestling Federation brand. And this is the Multiverse of Matches show. I just gotta say, I love this branding. And the premise of this show is, again, the forbidden door, crossing over and having talent from various promotions on this show. As far as lucha related or lucha adjacent content, though, just a few matches. For the X Division Championship, we will have an Ultimate X match. Chris Bay versus Rich Swann versus Blake Christian versus Jordan Grace versus Vincent. And, of course, your champion, Trey Miguel, all fighting for the X Division Championship. Your current Ring of Honor and AAA Reina de Reinas Women's Champion, Deonna Purrazzo, will have her Champ Challenge, in which she has an open challenge and will defend one or both belts, depending on who comes out and challenges her. And that will be interesting, because one thing that we did also see for Ring of Honor's show is that there is going to be a number one contenders match to become the number one contender for the Ring of Honor Women's Championship. Willow Nightingale versus Mercedes Martinez. So whoever wins that will likely be facing Deonna Purrazzo for the ROH Women's Championship somewhere down the line. And even things like Ring of Honor versus Impact in a non-title match, the Briscoes versus the Good Brothers. You have NWA versus Impact with Mickie James and Nick Aldis versus Chelsea Green and Matt Cardona, and that and much more on the Multiverse of Matches. A great theme, not a whole lot of lucha content, but it's still going to sound like a really fun show.
Yeah, I'm still rooting that they pull out the surprise card and bring Taya into that women's championship match. But
stop playing with my heart. Stop it. Don't play with me like that.
I'm playing with me like that. That's me wanting, like, I'm going to be holding my breath on Friday, looking at Twitter going, who was it? And then I'll probably be a little bit sad when it's anybody but Taya. It doesn't matter. It could be Avispa Dorada. Oh, spoiler, it's not. But I would still be disappointed that it wasn't Taya. But that's Friday. Big Friday. Saturday is also really big, and it starts big with WrestleCon having an event called USA versus the World. This is also going to be on Fight, $15. Kind of following this theme here, $13 to $15. And because the world is involved, that means Mexico is involved. So you do have Sam Adonis versus La Hydra versus friend of the show, Mr. Iguana, versus Golden Dragon versus Fight Panther Jr. for the Warrior Wrestling Lucha Championship.
Ooh.
Right? And I should point out, Sam Adonis is kind of friendly with the show too. Like, he's always really, like, he's the bad guy, so I try and downplay it a little more, but
he's so cool though, like, as a person. Yeah, Sam's the guy. Yeah, like, he's awesome.
So that also has potential to just be a show stealer. And then you have Gringo Loco, Flip Gordon, Caleb Connolly versus Aries, Aramis, and Arrow Boy. Like, if you want to see West Coast lucha style wrestling, you cannot do better than that match this weekend, in my opinion. I think that's going to be quite the event. And then in the now annual Effie's Big Gay Brunch, this time Effie is going to take on another Exotico legend. This is the one that more people of our generation are probably familiar with, because Pimpinella Escarlata was all over Lucha Underground. So you have Effie versus Pimpinella Escarlata. And I mean, what a main event.
Yeah.
What a main event.
Yeah. Love it. I love it.
Those of you who are less familiar with Effie's style because he's not overly lucha, Effie is kind of an exotico without being an exotico, so without the label of an exotico. So you can expect a kind of an interesting matchup of styles there. We're gonna have, then there's another event called Texas Mania 3 from the Gulf Coast Wrestling Alliance. That'll be at 3 p.m. It does feature mostly local wrestlers, but you do have Bandito versus ASF, La Rebellion versus Moonshine Mantell and Ryan Davidson for the NWA Tag Team Championship. So that would be your Mecha Wolf and your
Bestia.
Bestia, thank you.
Bestia sighting, yes,
Yeah.
yes. These men have been all over the place, and will be this weekend. So.
They're all over. I hope they've got a hotel that's really close to all these venues because they're all over the place. And then we'll have at 8 p.m. we will have a show called Lucha Maniacs, which has, as you can figure, a loaded card of luchadors. So we'll start off here. Aries, Black Danger, Chick Tormenta, Mini Abismo Negro Jr. versus Aragon, Brilliante Arby, Deal Dempsey, and Jonathan Lopez. Then Ray Leon versus Mr. Leo for the IWC Legacy. Tony Deppen, it's just listed as Cuervo, so I don't know which Cuervo that is, but all of them are good. Bestia 666 and Mecha Wolf against Epidemius and Epidemius Jr. for the NWA Tag Team Championship. And again, that's Epidemius and Epidemius Jr. have been operating out of Chaos and the North promotions a lot, and if you haven't seen them yet, this matchup is very exciting because they can really, really step up and shine. Arrow Boy versus Myron Reed, Tristan Ty, and Black Destiny. And then Decimus, Gringo Loco, Juventud Area versus Aramis, ASF, and Dusty's favorite, Lince Dorado.
Yeah, my man Lince.
Yeah.
Best shooting star press in the wrestling business.
That's a boy, Lince.
Yeah.
And Black Taurus versus ACH. So, I mean, that is going to be quite the match. And then Black Label Pro has a midnight show that I don't know. I'm so glad that I'm not trying to press for that one, because I talked to a friend of mine last year that tried to go to Black Label Pro's Friday midnight show or Saturday midnight show, and it did not end well for him. But they do feature Blake Christian versus Black Taurus on that match. Like, I mean, and I want to clarify, this is not because Black Label Pro puts on a bad show. Black Label Pro puts on a great show, but it's starting at midnight, after 2 or 3 days of wrestling, like, and alcohol's usually involved. So, which was what happened with my friend. He's like, he remembers going to the show, and then he woke up the next morning in his hotel, but that's he doesn't know a lot of that happened in between. So, also on Saturday, we have some NXT.
Yes, we have NXT Stand and Deliver. I'll be going over this week in NXT a little bit later on in the show, which will explain how we got to some of these matches. But the two ones that maybe, or at least 3, that Lucha Libre fans may want to keep an eye out on. Of course, we have our Fatal 4-Way match for the NXT Women's Championship. Mandy Rose will be defending against Cora Jade, Io Shirai, and Kaylee Ray. We also have our Fatal 5-Way ladder match for the NXT North American Championship. Carmelo Hayes, your champion, will have to fend off 4 different competitors: Santos Escobar, Solo Sikoa, Grayson Waller, and Cameron Grimes, who ended up punching his ticket into this match on this week's show, NXT show. And then on the NXT pre-show, on the Stand and Deliver, I'm sorry, not pre-show, kickoff show is the right terminology, we have the return of a tag team, Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai, teaming up to face Gigi Dolan and JC Jane of Toxic Attraction for the NXT Women's Tag Team Championship.
We will definitely be talking about that in the second half of the show. I'm sorry, do you have more on NXT?
Just lucha related or lucha adjacent, those are it.
Okay. I knew that particular result, and I can promise listeners who know the show, we will have more to say on the Raquel Gonzalez, Dakota Kai tag team reemergence later. So it will be explained, and opinions will be had. But the only show going on Sunday that was listed that I could find is the big show, the one that allegedly people are there for, even though people like me don't actually go to it. And that is WrestleMania. So, Dusty, what do you got for us?
Yeah, WrestleMania Night 1, Saturday night, Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio versus The Miz and Logan Paul. It's going to be the first or second match on the card. The show starts at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mexico time if you're watching from Mexico, and 3 p.m. Pacific time. Sunday, the opening match will be Queen Zelina and Carmella versus Sasha Banks and Naomi versus Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan versus Natalya and Shayna Baszler, and a fatal four-way for the women's tag team titles. And because of daylight savings time in Mexico changing, that'll be on at 5 p.m. Sunday Mexico time. Same time everywhere else in America. Big weekend, but not a big lucha presence at WrestleMania this year.
No, and we'll be talking a little bit about WrestleMania's kind of mixed bag of lucha appearances later in the show as well. So
yeah,
more things to stay tuned on with that. But that brings us to an end of all of the crazy things that are happening this weekend as we're taping the show. If you're listening to this in the future, I apologize that we're focusing so hard on things that were about to happen live. Next week, we should have coverage of almost all of this, time allowing. So we will be back with more on that. And Miranda, I believe you have someone you want to throw to.
Yes, thank you, Brendan, for all of that rundown of the event. Lucha adjacent, Lucha Libre centric, and just plain lucha promotions happening in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for WrestleMania weekend. And now that brings us to, well, this week's Lucha Central. So you know who we're going to kick it off to. Denise Salcedo, letting you know what's happening throughout the Lucha Central Podcast Network.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a reminder of where and when to catch all of the great network content this week. Get the full lineup and listen to all of our shows in the podcast network section of luchacentral.com. On Tuesdays, Mats, and Mayhem takes you inside the world of Lucha Underground as they take you weekly through the series with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of special guests from the groundbreaking series. Check out the premiere video stream every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Lucha Central YouTube channel and at luchacentral.com. Then listen to it on your favorite podcast platform every Wednesday. Tuesday nights live, it's WrestleBoss, where Fabi Chulo talks MMA and pro wrestling with special guests and listener call-ins. Visit WrestleBossLive.com Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific to listen live or call in with questions or download the show on podcast platforms on Wednesdays. Wednesday nights live on Facebook, it's Spanish show La Mesa de los Márgaros, giving you both the news and the chisme from around the lucha world. special guests, and a whole lot of fun make it one of the most talked about shows in Mexico. Thursdays, it's straight out of the bodega with Papo Esco and PWR promoter Gabriel Ramirez, as they have guests from throughout the wrestling world pull up to give an inside look into their careers. From indie standouts to television superstars, each week brings a new name and perspective. On Friday, it's your double dose of Lucha Central Weekly podcast, one in English y el otro en español. Lucha Central Weekly is where you'll find all the top stories of the week, both inside and out of the ring from Mexico and anywhere luchadores are in action across the globe. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms, either by their own series name or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network show pages to get all of the shows in one easy feed. And please consider giving a rating to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central Central. Have a great week.
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Mask Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to lucha-masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at lucha-masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
And we're back. Now, we told you everything that's gonna be happening, and maybe by the time you listen to it has happened for WrestleMania weekend, but we still have this week's news, letting you know what's happening with Lucha Libre Promotions, luchadors, everything that's happening this week, because the world don't stop just because it's WrestleMania week. It keeps on rolling. So, first off, we are going to discuss this week's AAA news with Dusty.
Yeah, the main news this week for AAA, there was a press conference regarding TripleMania Chapter 2 that's being held in Tijuana on June the 18th. And during the press conference, there were a few interesting things. The first one, AEW stars may somehow figure into the show beyond what we know. Dorian was asked about this, and he, about the AEW presence at the TripleMania, and he said, he couldn't really talk about who might be coming in because he couldn't say much until after the first round of the Roulette. So I don't know what that means. Kind of interesting. But the big news coming out of this was Dragon Lee and Dralistico will face the Hardy brothers, Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy. They will be making their first appearance in Mexico in 5 years. 2017, they did an appearance with the Crash where they won and lost the titles on the same night. They lost to the Lucha Bros. It was a great spot during their kind of indie run before the WWE thing. Very cool spot for them, very high profile. Great spot for Dragon Lee and Dralistico. This is probably Dralistico's highest profile match ever. And great spot for him in the main event. Going to be very cool. A lot of things will be building to TripleMania Night 3. The Chapter 3, Night 3, will be held in Mexico City. And that is going to be like the biggest, the best. Everything's building up to that. A lot of Apuestas matches. But Night 2, Chapter 2, will still have an Apuestas match. There's a women's cage match that's also related to De La Muerta, but done all in one. The entrants thus far are Ivy, Sexy Star 2, Lady Flamer, Lady Shawnee, Chick Storm, and 3 Luchador Sorpresas. It's a cage match with all the entrants at the same time. And then the final 2 entrants are going to have an Apuestas match immediately. Like, right away, mask versus mask. The loser will be unmasked that night in the ring. Very cool to have the Apuestas match. It may be the, co-main event, but I don't see it going on after the Hardys. Not a huge deal, but it feels like a main event, a big deal. If I had to guess on who was going to lose their mask, I would say Sexy Star 2 is a very likely candidate. Mm-hmm. The gimmick has been confused with Dulce Garcia, the original Sexy Star. It's tainted her popularity. People are always like, Sexy Star? I thought, it's always a thing. And I believe she would likely be unmasked and be given a new branding, new something. I feel out of the entrance thus far. And the entrants to come are fairly limited. There's Lady Maravilla is an obvious choice, but only having masked wrestlers in the match, it kind of limits who can be in there. So I think that
it's mask only. There's no hair provision.
No hair on the line. It's masks only. Well, that's the way it was described.
Yeah,
Masks
so
only.
you're right. That does super limit it.
Yeah. There's a couple of local Tijuana wrestlers that could likely be in it. Like I say, Lady Maravilla, we likely see in it. But some of the usuals that we might see, like Big Mommy or Taya even, we're not going to see in this match just because of the mask stipulation.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. We'll have all this news and more. It looks like there may be a little bit of a mixed tag thing going on. Sammy and Tay Conti, they won over the weekend and Tijuana at the last show, and they made it clear they wanted to challenge for the titles. I believe they're at TripleMania Night 1 and in Monterrey, so we'll see where that goes, especially with the Ruleta figuring into things, and maybe the men's and the women's figures into plans for the
And I think him saying that he can't give results until after that is just the company line, not results. He's
status
basically
or situation, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's basically trying to keep interest on their product, which is very fair to me. So I mean, it may not be a lot, or it could be huge, but it's definitely a good idea for them to not let their product get lost in the wave of other big events going on right now.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's going to be a big night with at least a couple of big matches, exciting matches going on. The Ruleta, it sounds like we might be in for some surprises at night 1, so it'll be very exciting. We'll report on all of that when it happens, still to come in the future, but exciting stuff. AAA, still no news on the lawsuit, by the way, with FMV. And they've just kind of successfully dodged it, and they're like, what lawsuit? And so far, Fight TV, WrestleMania weekend, and AEW have been like, you say no lawsuit? I guess no lawsuit. And, I mean, that's just how it's gone. But everything seems to be coming up AAA. Like, this is the most hype and excitement they've had in a long time. Vikingo is wildly hyped, probably the best wrestler in the world right now. And just amazing things going, and it feels like this is going to be AAA's year. So I think we're really seeing the beginning of their ascension to being the American Lucha Libre company, or the company you think of with Lucha Libre in America.
Yeah,
big year for them, and they're really going to climb this year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like I keep saying, I think Lucha is the in product right now, and that makes it the perfect time for AAA to make big moves. So
absolutely,
yeah.
And they're making big matches, drawing a lot of interest. Social media interest in the Hardys match was unbelievable. Yeah. People that I've friends with online and online acquaintances that don't even watch Lucha were hyped for that match because they figured Jeff Hardy was going to jump off of stuff and it was going to be crazy, and that's what they want to see. And that alone is going to draw eyes to the product, and they're going to see that it's more than just flips, that there's a lot of really spectacular stuff that goes on Lucha Libre. It can be physical, it can be heavy, it can be comedic, but it's always interesting.
But if you're into Jeff Hardy jumping off of stuff, we've got Jack Evans and we've got Aerostar. So come on.
Yes.
Yeah. It'll be amazing. And Jeff Hardy is definitely going to jump off of stuff. It's going to be crazy. I would not want to take a Swanton from Jeff Hardy in 2020. It looks like it caved your chest in.
Yeah.
But other than the 2022 Swanton, everything else, I'm excited. And it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be exciting. And again, I mean, I'm happy to, on social media, point you to Aerostar in particular jumping off of stuff.
Yeah.
That's
his deal. He is amazing.
So we will happily introduce new Lucha fans to jumping off of stuff if that's what you're into, because it's crazy. Our friends are crazy.
Yeah, that's it for AAA this week. We'll have all the results from this week's show, the WrestleCon show, and more next week. We'll have the rundown from from the AAA show in Tijuana last week as well.
Now, this is kind of a rare spot for AEW to be in, to kind of be the odd man out, because they are not having, outside of just regular programming this week, anything very much to do with WrestleMania weekend. So we don't have much to report outside, though, of, still weekly television, especially a pretty big match that did happen this week on Dynamite.
Yeah.
Yes. And also a little to report about WrestleMania weekend. Brian Cage did an interview that dropped just as we were recording, and he said that Tony Khan, heavily preferred that his wrestlers did not work WrestleMania weekend, at least wrestle on WrestleMania weekend. And so that's why you didn't see many people doing it. But the fact that Thunder Rosa is not only wrestling, but has her own show, so shows that she has a lot of stroke and pull in AEW, and that's a good spot for her politically. Yeah. Shows that she's going to be a strong contender. We didn't get to see much from Rosa this week on Dynamite, just a promo about, her strength and being strong. I hope we get to see her in action soon. Very exciting. Her work in the ring is obviously what really makes it. Her promos are getting better every week. Very exciting. But the main thing in Dynamite this week was Andrade defeated Darby Allin. This was an intense match. It was awesome. Andrade buckle bombed Darby Allin to get the win. Post-match, Andrade sent the private party to beat up on Sting. And we just mentioned these guys, but the Hardy brothers came out for the save. Great match. I loved this match. Really, just another hard-hitting match for Darby, but it was really a big win for Andrade. He kind of needed this.
Yeah,
it sets
really
him up.
did.
This is the first big guy that Andrade has beat when he beat Darby, and now it sets him up to beat bigger guys, or at least the impression that he can. Bigger and better for him. It always felt for a while like Andrade was kind of an afterthought in AEW. Because
yeah, I felt like that was what was happening in this one. Like, oh, he's in there with Darby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Until he won. That's what was exciting. Yeah. I mean, this is a guy that debuted with no music, and Vicky Guerrero getting all the heat.
And musical managers.
And there's Andrade. and then Chavo, and then Chavo left, and Chavo apparently was very angry at Tony Khan. He had nothing nice to say, but now Chavo is managing Bandito at Ring of Honor, and so I don't know what the hell's going on. Neither does Chavo, apparently. And
I think that was TK trying to make up with Chavo.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It's such an odd pairing that why else would it be unless it was just like an olive branch.
Well, yeah, I think they're trying to make Bandito the bad guy. So that way people can feel good when Gresham wins, but that's,
I'll never feel good when Bandito loses.
Right? We're biased on this show towards the luchadors, folks. Just accept it.
Well, somebody on AEW might be biased towards 2009 TNA because Andrade going up against Jeff Hardy and Sting, like that's an old TNA. I mean, like such a dream match in a way, and cool spot. Finally, they're treating Andrade like the big deal that he is. Jeff Hardy is, like their hottest thing going right now. And we've talked about when you're the hot new thing, AEW really puts a spotlight on you. But who's up against the hot new thing also gets that spotlight. They get the rub from that. That's Andrade. If you're not going to be the world champion, Sting and Jeff Hardy are about the two highest profile feuds you could have in AEW. And sets Andrade up to do amazing things, I think, in the future. I hope we get to see a lot more. There was a viciousness to what they did at the end of the match and the attack on Sting that we hadn't really seen in Andrade before.
Well, there was some brutality with all those strikes. Yeah. Like, it was the first time it really felt like he cared about something in AEW. And
he was on fire. And this is the Andrade we've been wanting to see. I mean, he was so aggressive and cocky, and just everything he did was picture perfect. It was the Andrade we've been waiting for. Very exciting. hopefully we get to see more of this. It's obvious this isn't over yet. The Hardys are going to figure into it. Sting, Darby, I don't know where we're building to this, where we're going. There was also Ric Flair had some problems this week, and it came out, like in a little bit of a revenge type situation on Twitter, that they had AEW had absolutely intended to bring Ric Flair in to be Andrade's manager before the plane episode of Dark Side of the Ring, the plane ride from hell. But now I am so glad they didn't pair Andrade with Rick. I felt like it stunted his debut, but now he's got his own thing going, his thing with Jose. Like, I am so into Andrade's character right now in AEW. This is the most exciting he's felt to me since he was in NXT. So I am all here for Andrade and AEW. I can't wait to see what they do with it. Awesome stuff. Check back next week. Yeah, we'll have all the news, but this is so good for Andrade and so fun for us as fans.
Yeah. I do have a quick interjection of facts that since you mentioned Thunder Rosa and something that I forgot. Mission Pro Wrestling, which you alluded to, is having their event on Saturday. It is part of the GCW collective. So if you are watching it on Fight TV and you want to pay one price, you can see all of the GCW stuff for one price, or it is $15 on Fight. So if you want to see Mission Pro Wrestling, Thunder Rosa's all-women promotion based out of Texas, so you know the crowd's going to be hot, they're also available this over the weekend, as Dusty alluded to.
Yes, Saturday at 3 p.m. And going to be an exciting card, I think. So, big deal for Thunder Rosa. This is really, I mean, what a big month for Thunder Rosa. World champion, AEW World Women's Champion, WrestleMania weekend show, one of the few to have, who else? Mox? Not very many have the sway to work these shows on WrestleMania weekend. So it shows that they have a lot of faith and a lot of trust in Thunder Rosa, but it also shows that they might be believing in her product. Like, she puts on an incredible product. And so I'm very excited to see that. That's one I'm going to catch this weekend. I highly recommend you get it. Going to be a great show.
Yeah, if you want to just save money and buy one package, the GCW package is the one I recommend, because that gets you the World on Lucha. There's a couple other events that have luchadors in it, but they're in deathmatch environments, so I didn't, for the sake of brevity, I didn't bring it up, but they're also on the GCW one. And you get the Mission Pro show on Saturday. There's something solid lucha on all 3 days of that multi-podcast. And we're using AEW's time to hype it.
That's the best part.
Yeah, that's just what we have to do, especially this week.
Yeah. Well, anytime for Thunder Rosa, but especially this week.
Yes. Right. Thank you, Dusty, for both AAA news and AEW. We're going to jump this week into Major League Wrestling. So on top of Intimidation Games that's being hosted tonight, on top of Azteca Underground tomorrow, we had this week an MLW Fusion and two pretty big matches. First, we had our opening bout, which is a 6-man tag. The team of Aries, Gino Medina, and Minia Besmo Negro faced Octagon Jr., Puma King, and the Luchador Sorpresa, Microman, making another appearance. And this was just a ridiculous trios match. Nobody sold anything. Just moves left and right. But also, again, another big goal of this, and I think is fairly well accomplished, to get Microman over. He broke up multiple pin attempts, had, I think, even just some of the best selling. Granted, I could see how delicate they were trying to be, but also impactful. Anyone working with Microman, but I think that he is truly, the MLW is viewing him as really one of the stars of their Lucha Libre division. But again, if you are looking just for a traditional feel good 6-man tag, Absolutely. This match is great, but as far as substance, really the only things that you kind of see, one, I do think Gino Medina is really selling well in this. I think he sold the best, out of everybody. And again, I think we'll see maybe some of that aggression heading into Azteca Underground's taping. And Microman. Just people are fascinated by him. The crowd loves him. They were putting him over on commentary, and it's Microman's world, and we're all living in it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the guy. And he's all over this weekend too.
Yeah.
At WrestleCon. Lots of stuff going on for him. Micromania runs wild.
Yes.
Careful, man. There's a man in Florida that might come after you.
Well, he'll have to go through all of the Micromaniacs, because there's an army coming. There's an army building for Microman.
It's true.
Yes.
True.
I'm trademarking that, by the way. TM. Micromaniacs.
Micromaniacs?
Yep.
That sounds like a great parody shirt right there.
Yes. We did also have a backstage segment with Cesar Duran. So and actually, let me pull back. So your winning team was Microman, Octagon Jr., and Puma King. Microman won by putting Mini Abismo Negro in a roll-up for the win.
Unfortunately,
yes, unfortunately, he was attacked at the end. But again, nobody sold anything, so I was very confused as to what this was supposed to do. But your winning team of Microman, Octagon Jr., and Puma King. Later on in the night, we did see Addis in the back and Cesar Duran approaching him, pretty much with a bag of gold, kind of bribing him, saying that he had a lot of great potential, but that there was obviously something darker and deeper and sacrifice that he needed to make. I believe alluding to something with Adamis. So I am not sure. Again, fight forever between Addis and Adamis. Maybe we will get them again in the future, or maybe this again will allude to something that happens with the strap match between Adamis and Gino Medina. But Cesar Duran still spinning his wheels and still playing behind the scenes. The big news, though, coming out of this week's episode, we did have a World Tag Team Championship match. 5150 faced EJ Nduka and a mystery partner, which, as we found out on the show, was Calvin Tankman. And 5150 was doing well in the match until a slip-up happened with 5150. Danny dove through the middle rope, and instead of hitting EJ, he ended up hitting Slice on accident. That took out Slice. That pretty much damaged Danny to the point where he was in a vulnerable spot, and EJ and Calvin were able to capitalize. First, EJ Nduka hit him with a power slam, and then Calvin with the running shooting star press for the pin, and we have new World Tag Team Champions in EJ Nduka and Calvin Tankman. That is why you probably saw, or if you remember earlier, noted that Danny Limelight is in a singles match for Azteca Underground, and as well as EJ Nduka and Calvin Tankman will be facing Los Parks, because that's another opportunity for Los Parks to get back to their goal that they believe is rightfully theirs. So, big change in title for the World Tag Team champions. 5150 won the belts back in November, so a fairly healthy reign. Who knows if they are going to get a chance to get it back, but you also have the Von Erichs kind of in the arena, I guess figuratively and literally within the tag team division. So kind of a very interesting ad hoc team of EJ and Calvin, but they had just the right chemistry and was able to capitalize on just the mistakes of 5150 to have a big win in their first time teaming up. So, as I mentioned, everything that's happening this week with MLW will be leading to future episodes of Fusion. So make sure you check out MLW Fusion on YouTube. It's free. It's absolutely free for you to watch each and every Thursday. It's only 1 hour long. It's a great show, great product, and a great, again, Lucha Libre presence on the show on a weekly basis. So even though right now they're in more of a fusion chapter, they for sure will be going back to an Azteca Underground chapter very, very soon. And that also just builds up the variety within the show as well and with the promotion. Just fascinating. But that's this week in Major League Wrestling. Up next, it's the segment you love. You gotta have it. So why don't you go ahead and give it to them, Tusty? It's This Week in Lucha Libre History.
That's right. It's time for This Week in Lucha Libre History. Be sure to check in at luchacentral.com every single day for This Day in Lucha Libre by Pep Carrera for information, birthdays, anniversaries, matches of the day, all kinds of videos, even more stuff than I can mention. It's all about Lucha Libre, and it's at luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. As we mentioned last week, you're going to notice some format changes here and there to This Week in Lucha Libre in the weeks to come. And this week, we're remembering the legacy of Lucha Libre at WrestleMania. Despite what you might have previously thought, and it may not be more than one match on the card, but there's a kind of a long history of Lucha Libre at WrestleMania. Rey Mysterio figures heavily into that. At least 50% of the Lucha Libre matches or Lucha Libre relevant matches at WrestleMania involve Rey Mysterio, including Rey Mysterio versus JBL when he became champion at WrestleMania 25, Rey Mysterio versus CM Punk at WrestleMania 26, Rey Mysterio Samoa Joe, Rey Mysterio Cody Rhodes, Rey Mysterio versus Matt Hardy, and that year Jeff Hardy had some drug trouble. He was supposed to beat his brother and become Cruiserweight champion. Rey Mysterio, he got the spot just because he was the best. Jeff Hardy was on drugs. A good spot to be in for Rey Mysterio. But he also had Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero at WrestleMania 21. And for me, Rey versus Eddie is the quintessential Lucha Libre WrestleMania match. There's two guys at the top of their game doing it better than anybody you had ever seen do it before. And they were doing it together on the grandest stage of them all. And what made this special was they had really come up together from AAA. They kind of got popular at the same time, AAA. Then they both went through ECW. Then they both went through the WCW Cruiserweight division before eventually at this point, this WrestleMania, they were the two most famous luchadors in the world that time. And, and maybe still, aside from Santo, it's hard to argue anybody more famous than Rey and Eddie. Very cool. This match really tied together with their history. That's what made it special to me. We'll touch on this in a little bit with Rey Mysterio too, but so much of Lucha Libre is about history, about legacy, about family, about remembering the people that came before you and then building on all of that to become yourself, to become the best. And this match had all of that, so much more. It really could have been anybody's match. It could have gone either way. Rey got the pin with a Hurricane Rana right at the end. Amazing. They shook hands afterwards. This was Eddie's final WrestleMania because he passed away that November. And really in my head, when I think of Eddie Guerrero, my mental image of him, he's shaking hands with Rey Mysterio at the end of this match. That's my mental image of Eddie. So cool. And due to that history and connection to the Lucha Libre, for me, this was just the Lucha Libre WrestleMania match. Brendan, what did you think about the Lucha adjacent WrestleMania matches?
Well, so Miranda and I spent a good amount of time for no particular reason, just researching all of
Research, because we're professionals.
Because it's fun.
Yeah, no, we went real deep down the rabbit hole, and I was impressed with the amount of things that was there. The one that terrified me though was WrestleMania 19 did have lucha content, and I was actually there in the stands watching the show. I barely remember this match. It was completely overshadowed by Brock Lesnar and a couple other matches. But that's my big takeaway is remembering Brock Lesnar doing the press that he does, the off the top rope press live. It's a big fan. But yeah, so like I said, that was my big takeaway though, was Lucha Libre was all over the cards. We knew in the 80s that he was working with luchadors. He had, like, whenever they were in Texas, they had events. So, I mean, we knew and we'd see that, but like, if you could go on the old school app, I guess you can if you're not in America, you would, you could just search by the luchador's name or even, Lucha Libre a little bit, and you would get some interesting results. And apparently some of those were WrestleManias. So, I don't have a single match that is a takeaway. Like you mentioned, the evolution of Rey and Eddie is kind of the big story, because when you were running down stuff, it was, you would say Rey Mysterio or Eddie Guerrero, like, over and over again. And,
well, and Eddie won the world title at WrestleMania 20, and that was such a huge moment. I mean, huge. Like, such a cool thing for Eddie. And Eddie, like, Eddie had kind of come up with the mullet, and then he cut his hair, and like all of a sudden he was the coolest guy in WWE, and it was effortless. And that was like the pinnacle of his coolness, was the world title.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that was one. I mean, for me, it was the payoff for a really long result, because I had been watching him since AAA. But it was a cathartic moment for me. Like, finally, one of my guys is getting the respect that I know they deserve. So, it cannot be understated that is a huge part of the Lucha legacy of WrestleMania, is the evolution of both Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, and hopefully, Dominic gets his up and coming, because he looks like he's going to be the luchador for a while with WWE. But let's see. But that's right. We had the Chavo Guerrero legacy going on here too. Can't underestimate Chavo and the Cruiserweights, because that match was for the Cruiserweight championships there, and it
was really a surprise win for Chavo too at the time. Like, very exciting.
Yeah, in retrospect, you're like, well, yeah, I guess Chavo deserved, but at the time, he was not looking like he was going to be a big name in WWE. Like, he did okay in WCW. The Guerrero name carried him a lot further in WCW than it did in WWE, for sure. But, I mean, and then you look at the names that were in that. Like, you had Ultimo Dragon in there. You had Rey Mysterio in that match. Like, those are legends in Lucha Libre. Those were legends at the time. People knew those are huge names. Tajiri as well. Not a Lucha Libre name, but a huge name. So, like, that's a great one to have some sort of legacy on, as well. But there was definitely more than that. We did mention, like, there was some gimmick battle royals. I always have to mention Mil Mascaras was the kind of core luchador in WWE. I don't believe he had a true WrestleMania moment. I couldn't find it, but it would never have been a surprise to have him at a WrestleMania in the early days, like 1, 2, or 3. So yeah, before I ramble too much, I'm just going to throw it over to Miranda.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely in line of what we've already been talking about, WrestleMania is, they joke about, the house that AJ Styles built, but Rey Mysterio, has helped build WrestleMania, with all of his appearances and matches. And yes, they weren't necessarily all headliners, but, always memorable entrances and memorable performances.
And his gear.
His gear.
You missed it, Dusty. I was joking we were going to talk about his gear and his entrances, because
that's really the highlight of WrestleMania for a lot of fans, is how Rey Mysterio comes out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, remember the year when he had the headdress with all the feathers, and the Aztec headdress? I mean, how iconic.
Well, and there's still action figures and pictures. Sorry, Miranda. This is your spot. We keep talking over you. Please.
Well, no. But I think in tying into with the culture that is lucha libre, the expression of identity through your gear. And Rey Mysterio, I mean, he has one of the most iconic masks of all time, but also the most iconic looks. And he always brought it to the next level at WrestleMania. And so, just to see what he'll be wearing at this WrestleMania is more of a point of discussion in some ways than what he'll be doing. But with all of the matches that he's had, of course, with Eddie, but even some more, maybe ones that are less notable or ones that we forget, like with Matt Hardy for the Cruiserweight Championship, with CM Punk at 25, JBL at 25, CM Punk at 26, Samoa Joe, Cody Rhodes, all of those are memorable matches. And so I really do feel like, you cannot talk about WrestleMania without Rey Mysterio. I do also then want to kind of throw this curveball, and this was in particular for 24, the Money in the Bank ladder match. That featured, of course, CM Punk winning, but Chris Jericho, John Morrison, Carlito, MVP, Shelton Benjamin. And that in particular is one of the more memorable Money in the Bank ladder matches of all time. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And so, I know we didn't get to see John Morrison in as many of those types of matches, but he always excelled in them, always excelled in those types of matches because of just his, agility and, his understanding of how to put really intricate spots together but also, understanding that his background in agility and high flying is a perfect fit for, those types of matches. So I think in the spirit of WrestleMania being the biggest, the best, the boldest, the grandest stage, there's so many matches that help encompass that. And whether that is some of those bigger types of matches like Money in the Bank or just a star like Rey Mysterio, who's up there with, legendary and even numerous WrestleMania appearances, probably top 10 in the company of WrestleMania appearances, and probably even higher than that. But I do think that, he, in one of the things that maybe is a little undershadowed or undervalued is Rey Mysterio's contribution to, the biggest wrestling event of the year.
Yeah, no. One thing you touched on that we didn't, have been talking a lot about Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero together. But a lot of the WrestleMania legacy isn't them together. It's not them on one side of the ring. It's not them as a tag team. A lot of that was played out well before they got to that level that they were both contending for the championship. That, it was, you're talking about Rey Mysterio's legacy. You're talking about that JBL match. You're talking about a couple of those other really big, high-profile matches. I always go to the JBL match because that's where he became serious to the casuals. He wasn't just the lucha guy that everybody loved from, the cruiserweight division in WCW at that point. He was the giant killer. He was a legit contender for the heavyweight championship, despite being almost half the size of JBL and other guys that he was wrestling at the time. And that was kind of one of the big payoffs to that. And Eddie was the same way. His feud against Brock Lesnar was more about his legacy in the big events like WrestleManias and SummerSlams than his matches with Rey, which, don't get me wrong, those are all instant classics. We all knew at the time, but they were so much bigger. Their legacy became so much bigger through this stage of WrestleMania. Just kind of worth noting that it's not just about the magic they had together. It was about the presence that they were able to bring to the show to help really elevate Lucha Libre to fans that definitely hadn't been exposed to it before.
Again, that was this week in Lucha Libre. Don't forget to check out this day in Lucha Libre history at luchacentral.com. But wait, there's more. Brendan, can you let our listeners know what else they can find on luchacentral.com?
Well, yes. So if you're listening to this and you haven't visited luchacentral.com, it really is time to do it. luchacentral.com is the online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get all the top news in English and in Spanish. Find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events will be happening in your area, or Dallas. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world. Place to have your voices heard from weekly polls to annual awards, seen and read by top executives in all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. And it's still free, folks. So if you really, that should be the reason to go. It's free. LuchaCentral.com is your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
Thank you, Brendan. So, of course, this week is pretty busy for the WWE. And even though we talked a lot about WrestleMania already, we still have some WWE tidbits for you. Dusty, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, the main thing is part of the WrestleMania media presence. They do a lot of interviews, the wrestlers do. I mean, they meet with people from all kinds of newspapers, magazines, channels, radio stations, all kinds of stuff. But as part of that, with the Times Now news, Times Now is the name of the paper in India, Rey Mysterio did an interview. And they specifically asked him about wrestling against Dominic. And he said that he, after he'd thought about it, he really would not like to wrestle Dominic. That when they had first done training, he thought that, to really get Dominic over, what they had to do was face each other in a match, which felt kind of natural. But now that they had been tagging together, that, he was really seeing the importance of family and the importance of legacy in Lucha Libre, and he didn't want to be seen as the kind of guy that would beat his son or that would fight his son. He wanted to go out as a father-son thing. He did not want to retire that way. We had kind of thought it was like a natural retirement match, Dominic versus Rey, but Rey doesn't want it that way. He still wants to be seen as being like Dominic's guy and being on Dominic's side. Mm-hmm. And even when he retires, so he does not want to wrestle against Dominic, which is kind of the opposite of what everybody assumed. And the opposite of the WWE style, where you're, always got to turn on whoever you're related to or whoever you're in a tag match with.
Yeah.
That's just kind of their deal. Yeah. And interesting, but yeah, so at least it'll kind of quiet the speculation, maybe, that he's going to face Dominic in a match. And we also discovered this week in an interview that Damian Priest did that Rey Mysterio's lack of presence last year at WrestleMania was due to the Bad Bunny match. He doesn't really say who it was, heavily implies that it was Vince. But he had been, of course, he started out as Bad Bunny's tag partner, but Vince really wanted, or whoever, really wanted Rey Mysterio in the match, and Triple H kind of at the last minute had to intervene and tell him, no, you're in the match, I will take care of this. And that's why we got to see Damian Priest at WrestleMania, but yeah, until Triple H went to bat for him, he was able to show the producers he had what it took. Rey Mysterio, and I guess he was still, allegedly back there. That's why he had no WrestleMania presence last year. And just kind of,
in case somebody said, "You're in, kid."
Yeah, in case they needed him.
Can you imagine sidelining that? We just talked about Rey Mysterio's legacy at WrestleMania, and they're just like, "No, we're gonna have you as the backup for Damian Priest."
Yeah, well, I guess he was the front up until Triple H got involved.
But, they still didn't put him in a match.
No, how do you not have him on the card?
Yeah.
Even the year that he was injured and he wrestled against Samoa Joe, he still got out there and, he lost. He had to drop the title, but nobody expected to see him. He came out with his Marvel Mysterio gear, looked fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the more memorable years of his return. Yeah, Rey Mysterio, he's just, how do you not put him on there? Even if you have him put somebody over, he's like the guy to have. And
yep. Well, and I wanted to swing back around to the Dominic story. We said when we talked about it off air that, that's probably just us looking at it through the more American style. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that almost seems to be true because,
Right.
you never had Blue Demon turn on Blue Demon Jr. None of the Santos have turned on each other. LA Park is clearly being a guiding force for both of his sons, and at no point are we speculating they're going to turn on each other. I mean, you never know because they are crazy, but we're not really speculating that it's going to happen. Just so on. So, the Wagner, Legado del Wagner, none of them, we're not speculating that any of them are going to turn on him, even though they all were completely rudo except for him because he's too popular. So, you know.
The siblings will turn on each other in Lucha, but very, very rarely is it father-son. I mean, I don't think that Super Porky and Psycho Clown ever feuded. Pedro and Pedro Aguayo Jr., like Perito, they didn't feud. I mean, it's just not a thing in Lucha. And
the closest I can think of is Grand Apache turning on Fabi.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he still was loyal to Mary during that period of time. So, and then they did reconcile. They went out of their way to reconcile that story before to wrap it all up. So, but that's the only one I could think of.
Yeah. And so looking at it through a Lucha lens makes a lot of sense. Through an American lens, it was
turn
different.
on him.
Yeah, turn on him. Kick your dad's ass.
Super kick him through the mirror, Dom. Just do it.
Through the mask shop window.
And I mean, so we keep referencing that, but that really is the point where everybody started to expect tag team partners to turn on each other. Like everybody, after Shawn Michaels had turned on Marty Jannetty, like every WCW did it. The Rock and Roll Express broke up. And then generation after generation, we get tagged, and then now we have the point where WWE is clearly forming tag teams just for the breakup angle. So they've conditioned us to expect tag teams are gonna implode at this point. Miranda, you're being very quiet on this, but I know you must have opinions.
No, I mean, I believe the conditioning is fairly accurate. I also probably feel like I'm sure it's a balance of, when you take storylines in a more, I guess, personal setting, I mean, Dominic has literally grown up under the spotlight. And, I don't know if they felt like how beneficial or not beneficial that was to his career, but I think he really just wants to support him and have him stand on his own. I think it could have been maybe a cheap heat or an easy way for him to turn, but I think Rey is looking at it in the long term. And look at Rey's career, I mean, granted, he's been this perpetual underdog, but truly someone that fans love. And I think maybe that's also, something that he is wanting to pass on to Dominic, and understanding that, that's a big sell in WWE when you can be a hero. Granted, there's other ways Dominic can turn. Dominic, I think, will have the ability to fluctuate between heel and face, because he does have a little bit of that Eddie flair. And that was, as much as, Rey is his dad, he has so much influence from others in the world of Lucha Libre. So, I get where Rey is coming from. I'm sure there's other ways they can go about it. I would almost be interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot that we can see happen. That's very true.
Well, that is this week in WWE news. Thank you so much, Dusty. And to cap off this week's show, we're going to revisit NXT. Now, I talked about it earlier. I kind of put the cart before the horse with this week's Stand and Deliver.
We had to, just the way it was.
We had to. But we did have a big return. Now, I'm going to take a step back, though, just in general. NXT news, or what happened this week. We did have Legado del Fantasma, face Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen. This is a follow-up to what actually happened a few weeks ago. Speaking of the Mysterios, when they showed up on NXT, when they, especially I think it was Raul facing Dominic, you had the team of Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen, somewhat interfere in that match. Now we finally had these two facing off with each other. Of course, you also had Elektra Lopez accompanying Legado del Fantasma, while Fallon Henry accompanied Brooks and or Jensen and Briggs. Jensen and Briggs getting the win on this match. They ended up, I think it was Briggs, ended up with delivering a choke slam to Joaquin Wilde. So a loss for Legado del Fantasma. A way to bring up Briggs and Jensen. I'd love to see more of a long-term feud, maybe a little bit more of a back and forth between these two tag teams. Again, it does always makes me concerned for Legado del Fantasma when they go through a losing streak. Legado, they did have a good showing on NXT Level Up not that long ago. And again, if we look at Level Up in comparison to a Dark and Dynamite situation, Level Up is where they can really gather some of those wins, but will it really matter if they lose on the bigger show? I don't know, just putting that out there. But the big news coming out of this week's NXT was the reunion of Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai. This started when Toxic Attraction came to the ring to deliver a very strongly worded promo. Of course, Mandy Rose mentioned, in her own issues now she's defending her women's championship in a fatal 4-way. That, she is gonna be, one of the most dominant, if not the most dominant women's champion, that NXT has seen, along with, Gigi Dolan and JC Jane in the tag division. And it was revealed earlier that night, or before then, Dakota Kai was in the backstage area looking for Mandy. She found Wendy Chu's, clothes and pillow, and Toxic Attraction admitted that they were the ones who attacked, Wendy, and took her out, and making fun of her. Dakota Kai then comes out, to face all three members of Toxic Attraction. She, though, gets beat up. The odds are against her. Until Raquel Gonzalez comes out to even the odds. They wipe out the ring of Toxic Attraction, and you get this moment where Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez maybe are not sure what to do. Dakota Kai maybe a little scared, unsure, and finally they embrace, and we have the team. The band is back together. So that was fairly quick turnaround, even though especially they've had such a
quick
longer feud. But, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, Logic, and if, their goal is to get rid of Toxic Attraction, I really don't think there's any better team. Now, there's a lot also of additional rumors and speculation that this is somewhat of a swan song for either or both Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. We've kind of already seen that with Tommaso Ciampa and his feud with Tony D'Angelo. It may make sense for both of them to move on to either Raw or SmackDown and do so as a team, because they work really well together. They have great chemistry. And maybe this is how they end up doing their kind of final days in NXT. But we still get both of them together facing Gigi Dolan and JC Jane on the kickoff show for Stand and Deliver. Brendan, I know you had some thoughts about this.
Have many opinions. But to address the last one first, where you're talking about them probably going up, I feel like that they're trying to avoid the situation they had with DIY, where in NXT they were still hating each other, but they were being brought up as a tag team because they did work really well as a tag team together. So that may be why we get the hasty brought together. But yeah, considering the amount of time we had on the feud and the amount of blood that was kind of spilled, The amount of, like, it just doesn't make sense for either of them to trust each other at that moment in time, but, I'm willing to go with it because the end result is that. If I were more faithful in WWE to do more complex stories, this could be the beginning of a new feud with Raquel and Dakota, where one of them turns on the other at some point. But I don't care. I'm on for the ride. Either they're going to have a great run as a tag team, or they're going to have another winning feud. It's a win-win for me. And I'm just super excited to see that they decided to go back to that playbook. Although it's a little creepy that it looks like Wendy was absolutely murdered.
Yeah, she was sleeping with the fishes, if we're taking some of that terminology.
I mean, and seeing sleeping is her big thing. You've chosen your words well. Yeah. Oh, crazy angle. I'm super excited it happened. I'm with you in thinking they're probably going to be coming up to the main roster and probably as a tag team.
Well, we will be reporting so much in the next few weeks, all of the aftermath of WrestleMania weekend. Make sure to check out the Lucha Central Weekly podcast. That does it for this week's episode. We hit you with a ton of stuff. So go ahead, take some time to process it all. We'll be here. We'll be here. While you're at it, go ahead and check out luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. You can check out Lucha Central on social media at Lucha Central on Facebook and Instagram, and at Lucha Central.com on Twitter. Our YouTube channel has all of our archived episodes of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast, both in English and in Espanol, as well as matches, interviews, and content that you cannot find anywhere else. Of course, while you're at that too, go ahead and follow us on social media. Dusty, can you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Yeah, I am on Facebook at facebook.com/Dusty Murphy, and I am on Instagram at Dusty Murphy.
And Brendan, where can our listeners find you?
I am 321 T-shirt guy. That's the numbers 321. T-shirt guy is all spelled out. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and I'm all over the Twitters.
And me, Miranda Morales, you can find me at the #Miranda, hashtag spelled out, on Instagram and Facebook. A final reminder, though, too, if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast streaming platform like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and more, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review. Subscribe so that way you get a notification anytime a new episode of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast drops. You can leave us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show, topics we should cover, topics we shouldn't cover, things that you may agree or disagree with us on, as well as letting us know on social media. We'd love to hear your feedback, as well as that independent wrestling plug. As Brendan mentioned, if you are an independent wrestler, promotion, fan, we always love to promote independent wrestling shows on the podcast. So please feel free to reach out to us for upcoming shows, match announcements, match results, and much, much more. For the Lucha Central Weekly podcast, I'm Miranda Morales. You got Dusty Murphy, Brendan Barr, part of the trio, all here. Make sure to stay tuned for future shows for everything that you need to know in the world of Lucha Libre. Thank you all so much, and we'll be back with you next week.
Lucharán a 2 de 3 caídas sin límite de tiempo. En esta esquina, el Santo y el Tabernáculo.